very good afternoon to all the students of class 12. Today I'm going to take on the poem A Thing of Beauty, written by John Keats. John Keats' lifespan was from 1795 to 1821, and he was a British romantic poet. Though he was trained to be a surgeon, but poetry took over him, and he was a worshipper of beauty. And he also says that beauty is truth and truth is beauty, and that is it, and that is what everybody on this earth should know. So he was basically a worshipper of beauty. Now this poem, A Thing of Beauty, is an allegory. An allegory is a poem or a story or a picture that has a hidden meaning in it. So this poem is an excerpt from another poem, and in which there is a Greek myth or a legend that is there of the moon goddess Cynthia. And she came down from heaven, and she fell in love with this young shepherd, that is Endymion, and when he was asleep, and later on she moves away, and Endymion goes on an endless search into the forest, under the sea, and in search of this moon goddess. Now, Keats told his other friends and all that this was a big test for his imaginative powers. Now, this story of the Endymion has been interpreted as an allegory, I told you, and it is a quest of the human soul for beauty. Quest is search. Now, in this poem, the characters that are there, that is why it's an allegory. Endymion stands for the poet as a man, and Cynthia stands for, the moon goddess stands for ideal beauty. And the moon stands for the manifestation of beauty in nature. So that is the poem. Now I will read it and explain it side by side. A thing of beauty is a joy forever. Its loveliness increases. It will never pass into nothingness, but will keep a bower quiet for us, and a sleep full of sweet dreams, and health and quiet breathing. So the first line that we have, A Thing of Beauty is a joy forever. That is basically the theme of the entire poem. Anything beautiful that you see in terms of beautiful face, objects of nature, things of art, monuments and paintings, anything that is beautiful, it always leaves an indelible impression on your mind, and it never fades away. It will never be erased from your memory. It will always remain there, and each time you remember it, each time you go back to it, it will come back, and increasing its beauty each time you remember it, each time it flashes across your mind. You know, we do take pictures with the camera, and everything gets, immortalized that way in the form of a picture or in the form of a video or whatever. So there is a lens in our mind also where a picture is taken, and it is indelible. It will never be erased from your memory. So a thing of beauty is a joy forever. Forever means everlasting, eternal joy, forever. Its loveliness increases. Loveliness, its beauty increases. It will never pass into nothingness. It will never become nothing. It will never fade away. It will always remain there, but will keep a bower quiet for us. This beautiful things that we see, the memory of all these beautiful things. So whenever we see something beautiful, we are elated, we are happy, and we enjoy the sight, and we remember it as a happy moment, a pleasant moment that we capture. Now all these beautiful memories, they create in our mind a bower. Bower is a leafy or a little shady corner, cool corner, where we like to sit back and relax, or maybe, enjoy our quiet moments. There's no bower actually, but it's that space in the mind where that beautiful memory is stored. So whenever we think about that memory, it is like a beautiful, relaxing corner. A quiet for us, peaceful for us, and a sleep full of sweet dreams. So whenever you have good memories, pleasant memories, so with these memories, happy memories, what happens is that we are able to sleep peacefully. All these happy memories, they provide us peaceful sleep. And when the sleep is peaceful and we are sleeping on a very positive note, so we are bound to get sweet dreams. And health and quiet breathing. So so these are the things that these beautiful, pleasant memories give us. It creates a quiet, cool corner for us where we can enjoy ourselves, where we sit down quietly, peacefully. And it also gives us a sleep that is uninterrupted except for the lovely, sweet dreams that we have. And because we are sleeping peacefully, in turn, it gives us health and quiet breathing, very normal breathing. Now this I would like to explain with a little contrast, that when you are worked up about something, when you're agitated about something, when something is disturbing you, or there is some weight on your mind, something is troubling you, then you cannot get sound sleep. You either can't sleep at all, or even if you sleep, you do get nightmares, that haunt you, or when you're not feeling well, something like that what happens? You cannot sleep peacefully and your breathing is not even. You get either you're gasping for breath or you take in long, deep breaths. So it's not peaceful sleeping. You can compare peaceful sleeping to a child's sleep, how peacefully a child sleeps, So all these beautiful things that we see, the memories that are created in our mind with all things of beauty, so they give us sound sleep, they give us good health, they give us peaceful breathing. So a thing of beauty gives us everlasting joy, and its loveliness keeps on increasing. It keeps on multiplying. Each time we want to remember that pleasant memory again and again, again and again. So the beauty seems to be multiplying. It will never pass into nothingness. It will never fade away, but it will keep a bower, a corner quiet for us, and a sleep which is full of sweet dreams, pleasant dreams, and sound sleep. And when we have sound sleep, then we have good health. And when we have good health, it's quiet breathing, not uneven, not gasping, not panting. So it is quiet breathing. Okay. Therefore, on every morrow, are we reading a flowery band to bind us to the earth. Therefore, so because of this beautiful memory or memories that we have, the pleasant moments that we've had, so every day, morrow means morning. So every morning when we get up, we are reading a flowery band to bind us to the earth. Now this flowery band, a band made of flowers, or a band that holds us, that joins us or unites us to the earth. Now this is not actually that we are weaving a flowery band or we are weaving it actually, no. This means that these pleasant and happy memories that we have, they keep us connected to this earth. They keep us connected to life every day. It gives us a ray of hope. It makes us happy. We want to live life. So that is what it says, that we create this bond of love. We create this bond of love, and there is a spiritual bonding with this beauty. The beauty that we see in different which is manifested in different ways. Anything beautiful that we see, so it keeps us united, it keeps us attached to the earth. Otherwise, what would happen? Spite of despondence, of the inhuman dearth of noble natures, of the gloomy days. Now, I'll just take on these two lines first. This flowery band that we are united with to the earth, otherwise what would happen? In spite of the despondence, there is so much of sadness, there is so much of despair, loss of hope, there is so much of unhappiness, sorrow, suffering, misery in this world, and there is lack of noble souls, good people. Because today in this world, what do you see? You see people who are selfish, self-centered, greedy, with a lot of malice, a lot of jealousy, a lot of hatred. There is so much of violence that actually there is no ray of hope. But the poet is trying to tell us that all these beautiful objects that we see, or beauty that we see, it keeps us connected to this earth. It gives us a ray of hope to continue to live on this earth despite. Spite means despite. Despite so much of sadness, so much of hatred, and when there is no ray of hope. So despite all that, and despite the people, we have a scarcity of good, noble souls today, because people today, as we see the herd mentality, everybody is behaving. Humanity is losing out, generosity is losing out, kindness, compassion, empathy, all this is actually we are losing out on. So values are degenerating. There's a degradation of values today, and so which sometimes makes us feel, why are we living? What are we doing on this earth, Why are we living when people are stabbing us in the back and there's so much of hatred and people are trying to pull us down? But then the poet says that it is only why we are living and why we are carrying on, because these things of beauty, they connect us to this earth. They give us a ray of hope. They instill us with positivity. They give us that freshness. They give us that lease of life to carry on. Okay, spite of despondence of the inhuman dearth, inhuman, unfeeling, brutal, merciless people that are there on this earth, of noble natures, of the gloomy days, the dark days, of all the unhealthy and over-darkened ways. Now this is that today there are certain customs that are obsolete and certain sorrows that are there, and there is so much of disease, despair, everything. So despite all these things trying to pull us down or, pull us back, but still we move on. And how do we move on? Why do we move on? Because these things of beauty, this beauty makes us live. This beauty inspires us, gives us the hope to move on. Gloomy days is dark days, when there is, when we are low, when things are not happening according to us. So there's a lot of suffering, a lot of violence on this earth. Okay, of all the unhealthy and over-darkened ways, the unhealthy practices that we have today, there's so much of corruption, there is so much of violence that we are killing people, just for sheer vested interest, and we've forgotten that brotherhood or fraternity or reaching out or extending a helping hand. That is the condition of the world today. So all these unhealthy, the sorrows, the customs, the practices that are there, and the over-darkened ways. There's darkened, I would say, for no hope. There's a lot of darkness, maybe darkness of ignorance, darkness of, wrong habits, the vices that we carry in us. There are less of values and more of vices. Values are the noble, good thoughts that we have, the values that we have, virtues, and vices are the ill thoughts that we have. So darkness is for hopelessness, where there is no hope, the ways are dark. We have lost count of the paths, the right path that we need to walk on. Made for our searching. The darkened ways made for our searching. We are lost and we are trying to find them. Yes, in spite of all this negativity, in spite of all these things that we are facing today, some shape of beauty moves away the pall from our dark spirits. So, we know that everything is not very, very good. It's not a rosy picture, but still, some shape of beauty, some form of beauty. Shape means some form of beauty, beauty in any way. It moves away the pall. Pall is the cover of, the dark cover that is there on us. It removes that pall, that sorrow, the gloom from our dark spirits. Spirits are souls, okay? So pall is a cover of gloom that is there, trying to push us back, trying to pull us down, trying to make us negative. So this aspect, any form of beauty, it moves away that covering of gloom from us, from our dark spirits, from our souls. Full stop. Then they have, and now he takes on some forms of beauty, such the sun, the moon, trees old and young, sprouting a shady boon for simple sheep. Okay, till here we take on. So now the poet goes on to explain, that these aspects of nature that we see, and he's mentioned the sun. Now the sun, every day the sun wakes us up, and it gives us a ray of hope that after every dark night there is a bright morning. The sun provides us with good light, it provides us with warmth, it sustains our life, otherwise we would have frozen to death. I mean, there was no question of life being there. And similarly, like we have the day it's nice and sunny, we wake up with very bright spirits, and we are rejuvenated and we are happy it's a bright day, and there is a bounce in your step, and you're happy and you're energetic, and there's a lot of vigor and vitality in you. And the days when it's cloudy, sometimes our spirits just tend to go down, and we are low in spirits, and that energy and everything gets missing. So in everything we have to see that beauty does provide us some incentive. It provides us something good to look forward to. So the sun, the moon in the dark night, when you look at the moon and the shape of the moon, how it waxes and wanes, and a full moon, it's so beautiful. Like they say that it's a pleasure to watch the Taj Mahal on a full moon night. It's so beautiful. So, and poets find a lot of beauty in the moon, and they write endlessly about the moon. So, forms of beauty, the sun, the moon, the trees, both the old and the young. And trees are a great blessing. Why? Because trees give selflessly. They provide shade to people who sit under them. They provide us with fruit, and biologically, if we see, they help us in stopping erosion. They bind to the soil. Then birds come and build their nests on trees, and we have so many medicinal qualities in trees. They provide us with fruit and so many things. So trees are a source of great beauty and a blessing. So trees both, I mean, even the old ones carry on. Even if they are old, very, very old, they don't stop doing their duty. They don't stop giving us their blessing. And the young sprouting a shady boon, which gives us shade. It's a boon as a blessing. It gives us shade, provides us with shade, which is a blessing. And for simple sheep, here the poet has taken a simple animal, that is a sheep. Now sheep, if we go back to the Bible, the biblical allusion that we have, or the biblical story that is there, Jesus Christ considered himself to be a shepherd, and all his people, he considered them to be his flock of sheep. So sheep is very, very important from the sense because it is an innocent animal, simple and innocent. So you can find beauty in the simplest thing. In the most innocent thing also you can find beauty. So that has been taken from the Bible. For simple sheep. And such are daffodils. Daffodils is a kind of a flower, beautiful flower. Okay, here I would just like to make a mention of the daffodils. If you've read William Wordsworth's poem Daffodils, in that also the same kind of situation is there in the poem. When the poet is in a pensive mood, pensive is sad and dejected, and once upon a time he had seen lots of daffodils growing, and there were 10,000. In the poem the poet mentions 10,000 I saw at a glance. When he just looked and he saw 10,000 daffodils blooming. Now that was an extremely beautiful sight. And then he says that when I'm in a pensive mood, that beautiful memory of the daffodils, it flashes across my mind and it takes away the sadness from me and rejuvenates me and makes me happy once again. You must read this poem by William Wordsworth. So daffodils, now we come on to the flowers, okay? God has provided us natural aesthetic beauty all around and all shades of flowers and such beautiful combinations you see in flowers, in butterflies, in birds. I mean, you literally have to see and look at that beauty and enjoy. So all these beautiful things, they are a source of joy, and these are the things which can be said to bind us to this earth. These are the things that are the flowery band that binds us or connects us to this earth and helps us to move on. Okay. To motivate ourselves so that we move on in life. And such are daffodils, the flowers. With the green world they live in. The green world, that's also an aspect of beauty. Green world, the forest and vegetation, beautiful greenery all around. They live in. And clear rills. Clear rills is streams or whatever, little streams. And clear means the water is absolutely crystal clear. With the green world they live in, and clear rills that for themselves a cooling covert make against the hot season. Now in this stanza over here, you will notice a little bit of contrast that the poet has used. He talks about the hot season, and then he also talks about the cooling effect of the thickets. Covert are the thickets, the bushes, the undergrowth bushes that are growing against the hot season. The mid-forest brake. The mid-forest brake is a kind of a brushwood fern. Ferns that grow. So this is a kind of a brushwood fern. And in the middle of the forest, you find that there are very tall trees, huge trees. Then you also find these thickets and these bushes which provide a cooling, and the stream that provides a cooling effect against the hot season, because it's really nice and cool in a forest where the sunlight doesn't penetrate so much, and it gives you a cooling effect against the hot season. The mid-forest brake, I told you, that is a fern. Rich with a sprinkling of fair musk rose. Now this forest brake, this thicket that is there, now we have musk roses growing over there, and the fragrance, is spreading all around as if somebody has scattered this fragrance all around, just as when you use a perfume, so how it diffuses into the air, and that, there's fragrance, it spreads all around. So these musk roses are also giving out a beautiful fragrance, and the scent of the musk roses is spreading all around, and it is adding to the beauty of the thickets. Okay. Sprinkling stands over here for scattering or spreading this fragrance of these musk rose blooms that are blooming. And such too is the grandeur of the dooms. Now here we come across to another aspect that the poet has brought out. The grandeur of the dooms. Grandeur means the magnificence, the magnificence of the dooms. Doom over here we refer to death. We talk of doomsday, we talk of last judgment, the last day that you have, the last moments when you die. So such too is the grandeur of the dooms, magnificence. Now here we see, we have imagined for the mighty dead. Now here we see that the poet not only finds beauty in all the living things and things that are around. It's not only in that he finds beauty, birth or growth, but here we see that the poet finds beauty even in death, because he talks about Such too is the grandeur of the dooms we have imagined for the mighty dead. Our forefathers or people who lived before us, all our ancestors and other people who must have lived on this earth. So we can imagine what kind of lives they must have led and how magnificent their lives must have been and how magnificent and how grand their death must have been. Now, why? How can death be magnificent? All these great people who have done great things in life, achieved a lot in life, you can talk about the warriors, or you can talk about great kings, or, very noble souls who lived on this earth. They leave behind footprints on the sands of time. And we people are the ones who follow. We walk on those footsteps, we try to be like them. So they motivate us to be like them, to live a life that is beautiful, a life that is full of virtues, and move on and have a healthy, good life. So the magnificent death of the people, for our forefathers, we can imagine that what a great death they must have had. So here the poet is trying to bring out the aspect of beauty in death also. Nature also, there is growth, then there is decay, and then how flowers wither away and then fresh flowers bloom, and then there are fresh trees, and nature is also going through changes of growth and decay. So similarly, man also grows and then decays and dies. So the poet wants to emphasize on the fact that there is beauty in death also. All lovely tales that we have heard or read, tales, stories that have come down from generation to generation to us. We have heard. Heard means by word of mouth they come down to us. Or read. Read means from the literature that is available about these people. Whatever has been written about these people, the literature. So we hear of lovely tales, tales that motivate us, tales that, we learn so much from. And all these are aspects of beauty. An endless fountain of immortal drink. Fountain is, you've seen a fountain, so it's the spring, the water that is coming down, and endless. Endless is eternal. It will never come to an end. Perennial, as we say. You've heard perennial rivers that flow forever, They are not seasonal rivers that just during the monsoons we have them and then they dry up. No, he's talking about perennial rivers, endless fountain of immortal drink. Immortal. This drink is immortal. Why is it immortal? Because it's coming from heaven and it is divine. This drink that is coming from heaven is divine. Amrit, as we say in Hindi. Okay. So an endless fountain of immortal drink pouring in unto us from the heaven's brink, from the edge of heaven. This drink is continuously pouring onto us. Now, it's not literally pouring, but from all these aspects or forms or manifestations of beauty, our lives also become sublime. Our lives also become noble. We learn so much from them and we get a ray of hope to move on in life on a positive note and on a healthy note. So the great stories about the lives of these, mythological heroes or great emperors who've lived or great noble souls who've done great reformers, all these people. So we have either read them or heard them. So they are also an aspect of beauty, an endless source of joy to all of us. Because whenever we see anything beautiful, it gives us aesthetic pleasure, something so beautiful. And it soothes our mind, it calms our mind, it gives us joy and peace. And the memory is everlasting and enchanting. Here I would just like to say that, because of this COVID-19, once again, on request, they had the Ramayana being telecast. Even though everybody knows the story by heart, maybe, but when you, again, this time when we watched it and we thoroughly enjoyed it once again. And so that aspect of beauty in that literature, in that story, in that life, all the noble things that we learned, and how, I mean, for the present generation, a must. Watching these things is a must, because it shows about obedience to parents, and it talks about sacrifice, placing, I mean, you can't place yourself before other things, like for a king to place his subjects before anything else, that he even, I mean, gave up his wife, things like that. So all these great stories of great heroes, great warriors, so these are always motivating factors. They encourage all of us, and they're all aspects of beauty. So the poet has given us a vast span, like from this simple and innocent sheep to trees, to flowers, to streams, and to this clear stream that we call water. Now, water is an elixir of life. Elixir of life, it's a divine thing. Why? Because it sustains our lives. Water, is an integral part of our living. Because as you know that the earth is also 70% is covered by water, 60% of our body has water, terrestrial animals also drink water, plants need water, we all need water to sustain ourselves. So water is another beautiful aspect that gives us life, and that teaches us to continue. And water keeps flowing, moving on, it doesn't stop. No obstacle can stop that water, it finds its way out. So there's beauty in everything that we see. But that also reminds me of another poem which, is very apt for today's world. It's that the poem is Leisure by W.H. Davies, in which he talks about that what is the point, because today man doesn't have time. What is this life if full of care, we have no time to stand and stare? Very apt in today's world. Today we don't even have time to look into ourselves, to know about ourselves, and we don't have time to enjoy nature, to see things. And these are the things that actually give us true pleasure. All materialistic things, they're very short-lived. That pleasure is very short-lived for a short period of time, and then you forget it, and then you move on to another desire. So these aspects of nature, that is why, like when people are sick and they say that you must go to the doctor advises, go to a hill station. Why? Because the air is so fresh, the breeze, the ambience, the surroundings, the mountains, the trees, the cool breeze. So everything is so beautiful. If you just had the time to just take a break and to look into all these aspects of beauty, our lives would become really beautiful. We would forget all our sorrows. We would forget all our grief if we just took time and we actually delved into the depths of beauty and natural beauty and nature. It's very, very important. And in simple words, I would say, supposing you have a photograph today, of your childhood, and as a teenager you look at it, I mean, you say it's okay and things like that. It doesn't have so much of, impact. Now, the same picture, if you see when you're 80 years old, you will enjoy it thoroughly. That beautiful moment that was captured when you were a toddler maybe, or a very small child. So at the age of 80, when you go and look at that picture, how much joy it will give you. It will carry you back down memory lane, and you'll remember everything associated with that, what you were wearing, that incident, that moment, your parents, the love, the affection. So, these are things which we don't care about, but if we began to care about them, then we would realize that a thing of beauty is actually a joy forever. Its happiness, its beauty multiplies. It never fades away. It never goes into nothingness, or becomes goes out of your life. It's always there. It always has an impact on you. So okay, I hope you have understood the text. I would like to go on to the question and answer, so that things would become easier for you. The first question: what kind of joy does a beautiful thing provide? A thing of beauty provides eternal joy, everlasting joy to us, because it leaves an indelible impression on our mind, and we relive those joyful moments, or that joyful experience again and again whenever we think about it, whenever it flashes across our memory, whenever we want to think about it. Explain its loveliness increases. Joy multiplies with every beautiful thought. So likewise, the loveliness of a beautiful thing, it will never fade away. In fact, it will increase many-fold each time we visualize it, each time we see it on the mind screen. Okay. Next question. According to Keats, what treasure does a beautiful thing store for us? So here I would say that a thing of beauty can never fade into nothingness, and it will store for us a quiet bower, that shady corner, okay? Because I told you there is no shady corner actually, or that leafy corner, quiet corner, cool corner. No, it's not there. It's that beautiful image in your mind that creates that corner, okay? So it keeps a quiet bower. Then it gives us a sleep which is full of sweet dreams. It gives us health, and it gives us quiet breathing. And this is a perfect, a perfect background for a good life. Okay. What does quiet breathing imply? Now, quiet breathing means to a sense of peace and serenity that one experiences on seeing beautiful things. And beautiful sights or beautiful objects or anything beautiful that you see, it provides us with the nutrition for the mind. You know, food provides us nutrition for the body. But all these beautiful aspects, they provide nutrition for the mind, a healthy mind. And that is why it refreshes us, and it relaxes us, and it drives away all kinds of aggression and restlessness. Okay, next question. What do we do every morning? Answer. Life on earth would be very, very painful, very difficult to live without the beauty around us. So the poet, what does he say? That every morning we must weave that wreath of flowers. That means, wreath of flowers means those pleasant memories. We must relive those pleasant memories which bind us to the earth, and it makes us sustain life and move on in life. So the string of flowers is actually the string of memories which make life worth living. Okay. What does the expression spite of despondence imply or mean? Now, this spite of despondence means that life is not easy. Life is basically a huge struggle, and we suffer pain, we suffer loss of hope. So this refers to all the suffering and hopelessness of man which we experience as we move on in life. Because as we say, life is a roller coaster. So there are moments of happiness also, there are moments of sadness also. So these are those moments of sadness, suffering and pain, dejection. Why is there, next question, why is there an inhuman dearth of noble natures? You know, in Satyug people were there, and everybody used to talk about that there are places, nobody used to lock their houses. Today we can't even imagine doing such things, you know. It's because there is so much of destruction in this world, there's so much of poverty, hunger, strife, violence, and man can stoop to any level, you know, to achieve his motives. So that is why we say that man is selfish and self-centered by nature. He's become like that. And there are very few who enjoy nobility of character. Very few noble souls are there who actually live their lives according to some principles, according to some values, who rise above their petty differences and they show magnanimity. They have a magnanimous heart and generosity. So on this earth, we find that there is a shortage of good people, you know, noble souls. Next question. What makes our days gloomy? As we say that life is a struggle, and our path gets obstructed by selfishness, by deceit, by treachery, by violence, by selfishness of our colleagues or our friends or our relatives. And we also suffer the pangs of defeat and loss of hope, which makes our life very sad and disdainful. D-I-S-D-A-I-N-F-U-L. Disdainful. Explain unhealthy and over-darkened ways. In order to be able to enjoy light at the dark end of the tunnel, one has to cross that tunnel, and rise above or transcend the darkness, get over that darkness, rise above that darkness. So these unhealthy and over-darkened ways, they are the trials and tribulations of life. And as I told you, that sometimes there's so much of sorrow and there are things that are practiced which should not be practiced. So all these are the darkened ways where we've actually lost track of the noble, virtuous path. Next question. What images of beauty has the poet referred to here? The poet has referred to many manifestations. He's talked about the sun, the moon, the trees, both old and young. Even though they are old, they continue to give their blessings, okay? And we cannot say that they're old and they become useless. So these trees are a boon. Then they give shade to people, and the sheep, the daffodils, then the green pastures, the rivers, the streams, the thickets, the bushes, the musk rose, all these are a sign of beauty. Why does the poet celebrate the beauty of a tree? The poet says that whether the tree are young or old, they are a symbol of protection. They give selflessly. And nature, these trees, they shower on the blessing of shade, they protect us from heat, they give us, they themselves stand in the intense heat, but they protect us from the sun, they protect us from the rain, they give shelter to the birds' nests, they give us fruits. So it's a great, great blessing. Okay, what does the reference simple sheep symbolize? As I told you in the Bible, so lambs and sheep are considered to be the embodiments of or manifestation of simplicity and serene beauty, innocence. And Jesus Christ, as we say, he was a shepherd and he was seen surrounded by his flock of sheep, that is his followers. So we can say a biblical allusion, A-L-L-U-S-I-O-N. The poet has made specific reference to the sheep because they are symbols of divine beauty, simplicity, innocence, and divine beauty. Okay, next question. How are the streams beneficial to mankind? Streams or rivers or any water bodies, I told you, they are the elixir of human life. Their beautiful sight provides a cooling effect which provides respite in the hot season. Okay. Next question. What does grandeur of the domes imply? Growth and decay, they are complementary to each other, and there are two both of them are two vital aspects of life. And the poet, as he sees beauty in life, in everything that's growing around, in mankind, everything, he also sees beauty in death and decay. They are also beautiful creations of nature. Okay. Towards the end, in the last stanza, I had spoken about contrasting aspects of life. So, next question. What contrasting aspects of life has the poet referred here? So, life is basically a blend of warmth and coolness. Then there's growth and there's decay. Every season has its own aspect of life, contrasting with the other, and has its own charm and beauty. So these are the contrasting effects of life. Joy, sorrow. Okay, you're a child, you're an adult. These are contrasting, and there's growth. Okay. Next question. Who are the mighty dead? The mighty dead refers to those great noble souls, great men, Maybe they were warriors, or maybe they were emperors, or maybe they were reformers, or they were the ones who saved humanity, mankind. So all great noble souls who left behind their footprints in the sands of time. And these people, they had a glorified death by embracing it very gracefully and magnificently. Okay. Why, excuse me please, why does the poet make this reference? The poet refers to the mighty dead because beauty can be seen not only in life, beauty can also be seen in death. Just as there's beauty in birth, there is beauty in death also. Especially people who die a magnificent, glorious death. What lovely tale, next question, what lovely tales have we heard or read? We've heard great tales of, in the books of history and other things, and stories, and great biographies and autobiographies, and we learn so much from them, and all these have an indelible impression or imprint on our minds, and they are an everlasting source of motivation to all those who read or hear about them. Okay, next question. What is referred to as an endless fountain of immortal drink? Beauty. In all respects, whether it's in growth or it's in decay, it's in death or it's in birth, it is a perennial, everlasting source of motivation. It is like an endless fountain that is pouring onto us from heaven, and we can drink, that immortal elixir of life from all things of beauty. Okay, next question. Pouring unto us from the heavens brink. Beauty is the greatest gift of God to mankind, and He showered upon us from the heavens above. The beauty is eternal, everlasting, and we bask in the glory of all that is there in the past, and we derive great inspiration and motivation from all these aspects of beauty. Next question. Why is grandeur associated with the mighty dead? Beauty for Keats was not just sensuous or outer beauty, but it was also intellectual and spiritual. A magnificent death of a warrior or an emperor, or somebody which involved selfless sacrifice, has its own grandeur. Thus, the poet associates grandeur with the mighty dead because he saw spiritual and intellectual beauty in their grand and magnificent death. And as I told you earlier, growth and decay go hand in hand in nature, and they both have their own grandeur and beauty. Likewise, a brave and grand death makes one immortal. Their names get immortalized. Another important question that I would like to do with you is, how does the poem highlight Keats' yearning for ideal beauty, perfect beauty? Keats loved the principle of beauty in all things, and he found beauty, like we see in birth as well as in death. So he visualized beauty to be eternal, everlasting. Not merely physical or sensuous beauty can be eternal because that fades away with time, physical beauty fades away with time, but the intellectual beauty and truth and things that we transcend over the period of time, or the beauty of ideas, the realization of truth, which we transcend time and space, both are also considered as aspects of beauty. And it is this ideal beauty that he refers to in the poem. For according to him, as I told you in the beginning, beauty is truth and truth is beauty. Next question. How does the poem highlight the poet's immense faith in the divine? Okay, and as we see in the last stanza, how he's mentioned about the divine nectar or the divine fountain that keeps pouring onto us from heaven. So for him, truth and beauty are both spiritual and intellectual, and he saw truth and beauty as the common attributes of the divine reality. Nature, he felt, was beautiful, yes, of course, like the sun, the moon, and the stars are all beautiful, only because these beauties are a reflection of the beauty and majesty of their maker or creator, that is God. And that is the highest truth. That is the highest truth. So in the concluding lines of the poem, as I told you, that he refers to the faith in the divine, faith in the Almighty, faith in the divine beauty, when he sees nature as an endless fountain which pours forth its bounties on earth, the blessings. And why do you think beauty is a virtue? Beauty is a virtue because it is a blessing. It has blessed us in so many ways. That is why beauty is a virtue, a blessing. Well, I hope I have been able to reach across and you've understood the text, and also I hope you benefit from the question and answers too. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you so much. Don't forget to press the like button, please, if I have been of any help to you. Thank you so much.